post them to our YouTube. So if you want to go back and rewatch it, or if you want to watch some of our other Water Smart classes, they're all there. Second, I wanted to remind everybody of our WaterWise house calls for a free smart irrigation controller or water audit. And lastly, our rebates. We offer 3 rebates, an ultra low flush toilet, pressure reducing valve, and high efficiency clothes washer rebate. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to email us at our water efficiency email that's posted below, or you can call us at that number. And if you want to do your own personal research on it, our website is linked there as well. So now I wanted to pass it along to our instructor for today, Leslie Crenna.
All right, thank you, Jace. So you're in the right place, from Greywater to Green Garden, how to reuse your home's water to help your garden thrive. Sponsored by the Citrus Heights Water District. So my name is Leslie Crenna. I am part of Eco Assistant, which is a sole proprietorship here. I live in Woodland, California, and I do a lot of work in Sacramento and in Davis as well. So I have several certifications that have put me in this position to chat with you today about Greywater. One is with Greywater Action. I'm a certified level 2 Greywater designer and installer. I highly recommend you go check out Greywater Action's website and all of their training and informational resources. I also did a Quell Greywater training, and the curriculum is linked here. Also a really important resource. And I've done some training with the American Rainwater Capture Systems Association, ARCSA, which also has training for Greywater capture knowledge. So what does Eco Assistant do? We do whole home consultations, Greywater and rainwater harvesting, site assessments, designs, and workshops. And just in case you're not sure, part of the point of Greywater, and one of the main points of Greywater, is to conserve water. So we're hoping that's what will result from after this webinar today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I call site-based water management, indoor and outdoor usage in Citrus Heights, where most of you likely are customers. A little bit about basics, code, the 2 main system types, methods, materials, and a little bit of resources for folks who want to try this themselves, DIY. A little bit of wrap up and some questions, and then we'll finish at 1 o'clock. So the answer to our poll, some of these questions I always like to ask: who already has a Greywater system? And we see that no one already has a Greywater system. So hopefully there'll be some great outcomes from today. 78% are interested in getting a system, and 89% are also just curious. So there's a little overlap between those two. And sometimes I do ask this other question about whether you're a beginner or an expert or just have some experience or knowledge, but I'm guessing that most folks here are just beginning to learn about Greywater, and you're in the right place for that. So site-based water management is defined by me as the management of water resources on site at the urban or suburban residential level that is in harmony with the local watershed as well as existing infrastructure. We want those to work together. So normally in most residential urban suburban settings, there's a supply of water, and that supply is typically rather energy intensive in terms of pumps. I just learned in your case in Citrus Heights that you have a gravity fed system, which is fabulous. Very lucky that way. It saves a lot of energy. And then there's also a mix of surface water, groundwater as well, which apparently also Citrus Heights has a little bit of groundwater. But then there's this stormwater and wastewater element that is also part of the norm. Rainwater runs off of your property typically and runs into storm drains in the street and carries potentially non-point source pollutants that you might be using on your property or that are running off of the asphalt. And that is typically not great for our water supply, our water system. And then there's wastewater. So Greywater is a part of or affects most directly the wastewater system. So all the water that is used in your home drains away and goes to a wastewater treatment plant, which typically also is very energy intensive. And this is what a home that is practicing site-based management may look a little bit more like. This is an image from the Waterwise home, Laura Allen, fabulous resource and expert on Greywater. And you can kind of see here in the front of this home, there's these little swales where there's a depression and the grade has been lowered and rainwater will gather here and stay on site. And then here's a shower system where this drain water is being used for fruit trees. And then this is a washing machine where this water is being used for other plantings in the landscape. And then here's a large rain tank, which is another strategy that you can use to manage water on site. We won't be covering that today, but I highly recommend looking into that as well. So there are other resources that you can look at for that. So the Citrus Heights Water District has about 20,000 service connections, and you may or may not know already, but your water supply comes from Folsom Lake and therefore is gravity fed, which is amazing. A lot of water districts don't have that, luxury. But there is also some groundwater wells that supplement that water. And I wanted to talk briefly just about water use. So I looked up the urban water supplier report for Citrus Heights, and Jace also worked with me a little bit on this. There's a lot of numbers and information here, but what this shows during the drought, that in Citrus Heights in December 14th, when there was a stage 3 water warning, users were per capita per day per person using about 83 gallons per day in this winter period of time, which is thought of as indoor use. So that's a way to determine or distinguish, because the assumption is that you're not using you're not irrigating at that time of year. Not always the case with our drought conditions, but often the case. And then the summer use is considered basically the total is the addition of your winter use plus what you're doing outdoors. And you can see here that there was a stage 4 water crisis in August of 2015, and this is the usage that was happening at that time. Now, as an update, the district, the users in the district have reduced their usage to 64 gallons as of this past January, when it was raining excessively, which is great. That's a lovely improvement. But then the outdoor has actually increased. And as temperatures increase, that's not an unexpected result. But Greywater can help us to mitigate that that summer use, the summer use numbers, by taking some of that indoor water and offsetting this outdoor use. And your average per day is in Citrus Heights is 124 gallons per day if it's averaged over the calendar year. And so you can take that to your bill and get a sense of how you match up with the average. You have to do a little bit of math. So launching into what is Greywater. Greywater per California code is drainage water from clothes washers, or your laundry, basically, showers and tubs, and bathroom sinks, which are sometimes called lavatories. There are 3 types of gray water. The kind that we use typically in California is called light gray water, comes from those sources. Dark gray water is, or heavy gray water, comes from kitchen sinks and dishwashers, and in California that is not allowed. And then of course toilets is called black water, which we definitely do not use. Black water goes entirely to the sewer and the wastewater treatment plant. So why gray water? What's great about gray water? So like I said, it saves or offsets potable water use, and as a result, reduces embodied energy consumption. In Citrus Heights, that's a smaller number than it is in a lot of other districts. It's great for outdoor irrigation, but not all applications. It can really make your shade trees very healthy. Typically, though, the gray water community likes to recommend gray water for food producing trees, because we like to encourage people to plant and grow their own food. It's great for groundwater recharge, which has been a serious issue in the Central Valley. It will save you some money off of your bill, but not much. So don't think of this like solar, rooftop solar that, you know, actually can break even and start making a profit. It's not like that for gray water. So you all are probably asking yourselves, is gray water right for you? And we'll have lots of more information about that will help you make that decision. But some of the big picture things are whether your landscape is suitable to receive it, whether your plumbing is accessible for laundry systems. That's typically always the case. Are your appliances and fixtures near exterior walls? Are they near the landscape that is going to be receiving it? And is it within your budget? And if you're remodeling, of course, it's a great thing to incorporate into your remodeling plans. So you want to think in generally about your usage and need for water. How much does your household consume? You can find that on your bill. It will be in cubic feet, and which is about 748 gallons. So I highly encourage you to go to your bills and really zero in on how much water you are using every month. You can take advantage of those rebates to put in a low flush or dual flush toilet, and also a high efficiency washer. Those are really great, generous rebates. You want to look at the square footage overall. How much area are you looking to irrigate? And also, what needs does your landscape serve? If you have a lot of lawn, you might have a different need than if you are sort of going into a lot of low water landscape. And in that vein, I very much encourage you to, if you have a lawn, to consider converting it. If you're using it for play and you definitely use your lawn, that's great. But if it's really something that you look at, you probably will enjoy it a lot more if you convert it to an actual planted landscape with shrubs and trees and wildflowers and those sort of beautiful things. So you really want to reduce climate inappropriate landscaping, and the amount of irrigation that lawns need sometimes definitely lives in that range. We always encourage folks to produce their own food and veggies, and if you use natives, you can create wildlife habitat. Incorporating swales and rain gardens. And if you have spray irrigation, it's great to convert it to drip, especially if you're putting in these local natives. So there are 2 basic types of gray water systems. Laundry to landscape uses the washer pump to move the gray water, and branch drain, which uses gravity, and it is the same methods and materials as regular drainage plumbing. So they're 2, even though they sort of have a similar function, they are completely different in terms of the method and materials. Most systems distribute directly to the landscape, but not all. And by code, they all have a 3-way valve, which allows you to divert water either to the landscape or to the sewer. And that valve needs to be either readily accessible or it needs to be operable in a readily accessible manner, which often is a remote switch. California state has been legal in the state of California for 13 years now. And there are specific code requirements. It is Chapter 15 of the California Plumbing Code. If you're a code geek and you want to really dig into the details, I recommend you do that. There are no cross connections with potable water. That's obviously very key. No ponding or runoff is acceptable. You don't store it for more than 24 hours because it will go septic. There is bacterial elements in this water. That's why it gets dumped directly onto the landscape for the most part. And if you discharge 2 inches or more below the surface, then you do not need to treat that water. And that's very key because in a residential setting, that's not really doable for most people. There are more complex systems that involve pumps and filters and even pressure, and you can build a wetland, and some amazing structures and buildings and for instance in San Francisco and Seattle have indoor reuse systems, but that's again not really typical or likely for single family residential settings because of cost and complexity. So as per our title, we want to make sure that you, and many of the folks here today might be sort of gardening oriented. Plants that very much appreciate gray water are fruit trees, as I mentioned, and berries are great for shower-based systems because they like to be wet. They like wet feet, and shower systems, if you are daily taking a shower, several of you, in fact, then those berries will be getting all sorts of lovely irrigation. Stone fruit, plum, avocado, pomegranate, citrus, fig, pineapple, guava, all kinds of fruit trees really thrive on gray water. Shade trees also, thirsty shrubs, and non-root crop veggies. So here's an example of some parsley that's in my backyard. That is gray water fed, and it is a leafy green that does not lay on the ground, so that is acceptable. And here is nearby this, a nectarine and pomegranate that are 2 years old that are solely gray water fed, and of course rainwater as well, and they're doing very well. Very, very happy. This is a recent photo, so they are growing the fruit, or at least the nectarine is. The palm is still a little bit immature. There are plants that are not good for gray water. Root veggies like carrots and turnips, that is contrary to code, and leafy greens that rest on the ground as well. Oak trees and other established hardy trees do not do well, do not need that extra irrigation. They get their water with their roots, their tap roots. Certain plants that prefer acidic irrigation, acidic pH, blueberries and rhododendrons do not thrive on gray water because the gray water is slightly base or alkaline, so it's not ideal for those. Citrus don't like wet feet, so again, they're good for laundry systems, but perhaps not for branch drain. You can mitigate that by making sure that your basins, that I'll talk about more, are a fair distance from the root system or only adjacent to part or one side of the root system. So not a all one size fits all point. Low water natives do not need gray water. They don't need this quantity. And so drip systems are fabulous for that. And lawns, although I've seen it in applications, for instance, in other countries like Australia, it really isn't a good fit for Greywater. So to launch into, so I can stop now if there's any sort of big picture questions, but now I'm going to get into more of the details. If anybody wants to put some questions in the chat about big picture questions, I can take those.
Leslie, I'm not currently seeing any questions.
Right. Okay. I will proceed. So the first type, again, getting into the details, the laundry to landscape, sometimes shortened to L2L, does not require permit in the state of California. Your municipality may require a permit. They're allowed to make more restrictive rules, but Jace could tell me, he's here now. Is there a permit required for a laundry to landscape Greywater system? Probably not.
Within our district now.
Great, thank you. So it diverts washer water to the landscape, and it really depends on how many people live in your house, how much laundry you do, how much gray water you're actually producing. So you do some calculations based on those things. You have to use laundry soap, not powder. And I'll get into more details there. You want to avoid anything with heavy salts, bleach, and oils and toxics. You flip that switch and you send those things to the sewer if you are putting those into your washing machine. And these are some rules of thumb for price that you may encounter with service providers. Of course, that can vary dramatically. So this is typically what the drain looks like for your washing machine. That's a standpipe, and that's the drain hose from the washer. And that just goes, through that P-trap and down that waste stack to the wastewater treatment plant eventually. And what a Greywater system does is this: it takes that discharge hose and feeds it into the three-way valve here. So if you have the switch flipped one way, the water continues as normal through the P-trap into the waste stack. Or if you have it flipped the other way, it goes this other direction. This part here is a anti-siphon. It just introduces some air so that it breaks any kind of siphoning that might occur. Typically, the materials transition here to flexible materials. This is not related to the Greywater system. This is just a hose bib pressure system. So separately here, you've got your main distribution line, and then just like a lot of other irrigation, there are branching distribution lines that feed into mulch basins, and mulch basins are a big part of the Greywater system. And you may have an emitter valve, a ball valve here at the end, but you have to leave at least one of those without a valve so that there's no possibility of backup. And in fact, generally you don't need a valve on the end there, but if you want to kind of control how much is going to each plant, that's one way to do that. As long as you leave either the end of the line or one of them without a valve, then that's fine. And I want to make sure to give Art Ludwig credit for this often used diagram. Laura Allen gives this great diagram that shows some of the different shapes of the basins. A typical for a tree is this ring shape at the drip line, but you can also do just a straight line for a row of plants, or a star shape like this. Those detergents, liquid detergents, you should definitely be reading labels, but these are 3 brands. Trader Joe's actually says it's Greywater friendly. Oasis is the original, definitely Greywater friendly. And this brand, Ecos from Plant Friendly Products, is definitely available at almost any supermarket, and is the best brand that you will find in pretty much any supermarket. And they need to be pH balanced, and hydrogen peroxide is a great laundry additive for stains, and that is fine for gray water. So there's a lot of design considerations for the interior for a laundry to landscape system. You know, you have to get access to the exterior of the home. Sometimes laundry rooms are in the middle of the home and not on a side wall, and that makes it very difficult to get that pipe to the outside of the home. If you have a high efficiency washer, if you've used the rebate from Citrus Heights Water District and you have this great high efficiency washer, you're probably going to get about 20 gallons per load as a rule of thumb. But everybody does a different number of loads per week. And it can be relevant if you do all of your laundry on Saturday, for instance, because a lot of trees like to dry out between irrigation being watered, basically. And so if you do your laundry every day, those plants will not get a chance to dry out. So that's a consideration. Sometimes there are walkways that are in the way. If you are not in a flat lot, that can be a consideration. You don't want to go pump up, especially as you move away from the home. In our area, of course, we are graced with all these lovely flat areas to live in, and so Greywater is very amenable to that. If you're interested in looking and you're a gardener and you're really very much interested in the water needs of various plants, the Wool Calls database, if you just search for that, is a great resource for the water needs of various plants. And if you want to find out about your soil type, you can search for Soil Web, and that's also a fabulous resource to help you determine the soil type at your home. And that's relevant because if you have really heavy clay, which you may already be aware of, you have to basically spread out the water further that's coming from the Greywater system than you might otherwise because of the slow infiltration rate. And of course, distance from the source of the water is also important, and I'll talk about that a little bit at the end. This is what a laundry system looks like. You can see the valves here. There's right here, you don't see the signage, but there needs to be a sign that basically tells you when the handle is this direction, it's going to the landscape, or if it's this other direction, it's going to the sewer. So that's something that you will see on those installations, and there's that air gap I talked about. So this is that signage, and it tells you basically, so you don't have to keep track of what is going where. And of course, there should be an owner's manual when a provider creates a system for you. We'll talk more about how to get in touch with providers. But this is something you should be asking for and is required by code. This is what it might look like on the outside when the air gap is on the outside of the home. So there is some exposed plumbing that you will be seeing here. It's not going to be buried in your walls like it typically is, unless it's part of a remodel project. This is a remodel project, what it looked like with an install. This is on the left is when the walls were opened up, and then when it was finished. And here is a transition to the exterior where it transitions to flexible irrigation tubing. And this is a clean out location. You can unscrew that and screw a hose into that. And if the lint from the wash water builds up, you can blow it out with your hose. If you happen to have a 2-story home, then you're creating a lot of fall. And that will allow you to spread out the water at more distance. So once it gets to the outside and we're in this flexible hose, this is the main distribution line, and then it branches off with a T-fitting into a covered discharge or emitter. Basically, either an open hose or optionally and judiciously a valve there. And then this is what the basin, this one basin looks like. And when the basin is filled with chips, here the chips were filled all over, but this same basin, you know, size was here, and so there's more chip to further depth in this area, and then this is just surface chip. And this is a close-up again with a valve that has to be, there has to be at least one open without a valve there, and that's a ball valve that if you're not familiar with that, if you're you can, it's analog in the sense that you can, you know, close it down just a little more to off when it's vertical to the pipe, to the hose. And that can help you to control how much water is going to a particular basin. Okay, so any questions about laundry to landscape burning questions? I see that there are two. Yeah. Go ahead, Jace.
Oh, I was wondering, do you want me to read them out or?
Sure.
Yeah, so we do have one customer or attendee wondering why not citrus? They may have missed it.
So citrus are trees that definitely like their roots to not be wet all the time. And so I've gone back and forth on this one. If you have, so for a laundry system, typically that's fine, right? We're not typically doing laundry every single day, and or it's only 20 gallons. So it's not a massive outflow of water. But if you're someone that does 2 loads of laundry a day, or for shower systems that you are, obviously most people are taking a shower every day, and or there are multiple people in the home, that might keep the roots of that particular plant a little wetter than they want to be. So there's a lot of ways to get around that. So I should be careful in saying it's not that it can't happen, it's just that you need to be aware of it and make sure that you don't put in a system that keeps the roots wet all the time.
And then the other question was another attendee that is wondering, so they would like to use their shower water for their fruit trees, and they currently save it in buckets. And I think what they're talking about is, you know, before the water gets warm in the morning, they save that and then take it out, dump it on the tree after that. So is there an easier way to do that? And then also, how do you calculate the costs?
Okay, so costs of the system or water that you're saving? Cost of water that you're saving?
I would guess the water that you're saving. Yeah.
Okay, so there is not an easy way to calculate the amount of water that you're saving. You other than looking at your water bill and looking at how much water you used last year and how much water you used when you had the system in place. So, and that's not an exact science. I'm not aware of researchers actually having collected this data, unfortunately. I am going to launch now into branch drain, which is what this customer is talking about. It's great that you're collecting in buckets, and that is totally fabulous. And yes, there is a much easier way, and that's what I'm talking about here. But buckets works too, but maybe you're tired of being on the bucket brigade. So I will continue on with this other type that is for showers. So the branch drain is what that's called. So the branch drain system, that refers to the method and materials, very same method and materials as sewer. It diverts water from showers, bathroom sinks to the landscape, and you need to think about safe shampoo and cleansers and other soaps. So that is a big part of the commitment of a Greywater system. For laundry, it's super easy to just change out your soap, and when you use bleach or something like that, you have to remember to flip the switch. I actually forgot the other day to flip the switch, and what I did was I just with that parsley, I irrigated. I just threw on, hosed it down and threw on a whole bunch more water to kind of clean out the light bleach that I had there. But for shower systems, shampoo, you're putting a lot of other different products down the drain. So there's a little more research and a lot more label reading you'll need to do. If you have an existing slab, and this is not a remodel or a build situation, branch drain is potentially prohibitive. There are some solutions, and I have some at the very end. If we have time, I can chat about that if anybody's particularly interested about how to manage this when you have a slab foundation, which a lot of us do. You do produce a lot more water, but the system is a little more complex, a little more costly, and it requires a permit, and that is the state of California requires that permit. So the authority having jurisdiction like Citrus Heights can't say no permit. So I don't have to ask that question. It's definitely required. Okay, so some of these landscape-friendly hygiene products, if you ever use Dr. Bronner's, always perfect, great, no problem. You're going to have to read labels though. So sodium lauryl and laureth sulfides are common sodium products in hygiene that you don't want to put on your landscape. So you have to, likely the product you're using now has those salts in it. You're looking for a neutral pH. And bar soaps are often quite alkaline, so you might need to switch to liquid soap for washing your body. And if you're a chemistry buff, the Skin Deep database has all of the chemical components of thousands and thousands, uncountable products out there on the market. So you could do that before going to your supermarket and spending time reading on the shelves, but you're going to need to do that also. In terms of cleaning your tub or your shower, I just discovered through this update that there are actually Ecos, plant-friendly products, has some really great Greywater landscape-friendly cleansers, cleaning products, Parsley Plus and Creamy Cleanser. So I'm going to be buying those myself soon to give them a real whirl, but they are recommended by other folks in the Greywater community, so I trust them. So for branch drain, again, this is the second type of Greywater system. Your shower heads should be 2 gallons per minute, but that's not always the case. So something to check out. You can check that by putting a bucket in your shower and try to time that out. How many showers do you take a week? How long are your showers? That will determine how much water you're producing. If you're remodeling, absolutely, that's the before, right up front, you need to talk to your general contractor, and he needs to talk to your plumber, and you might need to bring in a designer to get that included in the plans. And again, crawl space versus slab is a real different scenario. Crawl space is much easier to install. Again, slope is more critical actually for the branch drain because these are, this is drainage plumbing, everything has to fall 2%, which is a 1/4 inch per foot. So there is trenching involved in that. And the further you get away from the house, the deeper the discharge is going to be. And there are limits to how deep it is, how useful it is to the plants if it gets too deep. And therefore you want to keep the elevation of the drain as high as possible, which is not the case with the sewer, typical sewer lines drop below the house, below the foundation, and ideally you are grabbing the water before that. So I'll have another example that will help make that more clear. This is what the branch drain shower tub valves look like. They're adjustable. They're much more flexible than the simple laundry valves. This was older houses that had exterior plumbing, so super easy. But most people, this is a crawl space and or foundation look. what this would look like. Cutaway, there's the valve, and the water coming from the sink in the tub is either going to the greywater / landscape or to the sewer. The backwater valve is required depending on your water table, and there may be some, I'm not familiar, Jace might know if there's some really shallow water tables in Citrus Heights. So maybe in the question session, if anybody's interested in that, if they know they have a really high water table, then that could be relevant to you. This is what the branch drain valve and actually an actuator look like in a crawl space. There's a line there, low voltage line that feeds into a switch in the bathroom that allows the homeowner to switch the flow, the discharge to the sewer or to the landscape in the bathroom. And this is a cutaway that shows what that switch would look like when it's in a cabinet in the bathroom. And every system has to have a clean out. I mentioned the laundry system. Here is the branch drain clean out, and it's just like any other sewer clean out. To the right there, this thing here will screw out, and you can blast it with a hose. And this shows, even though the slope is not evidence, you get an idea that the pipe has to fall 2% as it goes towards the discharge. Okay, and so this is what it looks like when it gets out onto the landscape. These are some trees are not actually put in yet. This is in advance of the trees being planted, but here's the basins. The water is flowing out these pipes and discharging right here, and these will be filled with chips. And the water flows in, and the chips soak up the water and get saturated and create a wet ring here around the trees. And this, at the end, the trees were planted in place there. So some rules of thumb. Most typically high efficiency washing machines use about 20 gallons per load. There are ways of measuring that, but I have found this rule of thumb works pretty well. Medium-sized trees with moderate water need require about 20 gallons per week in the middle or height of summer. But if any of you are gardening experts, you know that there's a lot of wiggle room around all of this. If you're having a heat wave, you probably want to manually add irrigation to all of your yard, including greywater fed yards and plants. And then I always get asked this question about distance. It is a critical question. So for laundry machines, you really don't want to go past 50 feet. If you have really amenable conditions, you might go as far as 75 feet from the washer, from the laundry. But really that depends on design. And like I said, with the branch drain, you are dropping that 2%. And so you have that big, thick ABS pipe has to live in a trench as it falls and goes down downstream, basically, to keep the water moving. And so the further you get away from your home, the deeper that trench has to be. And as it gets to a certain depth, it's no longer useful to the plants. And you know, it's an excessive amount of trenching. So distance matters even more with branch drain. And getting close to the end. So if you are interested in learning more about this, doing this yourself, or you know, experimenting on your own home, this is by far the best resource with specs and measurements and how to step-by-step that is out there by Laura Allen, Greywater Green Landscape. And of course, you're going to be, if you're thinking about putting this in yourself, visiting irrigation stores, hardware stores. The urban farm store is a great resource for materials. And also for materials, cleanwatercomponents.com. I highly recommend Gorilla Glue as a low VOC brand, and they have clear Prima Glue that is self-priming, that is great for gluing PVC. There are other materials you can use, but besides PVC, but like Blue Lock, I personally have not used Blue Lock, but the actual building material is a little more climate friendly. And then if you're looking for a provider, Greywater Action is website is the best place to go. They have an extensive, they do training and certification like I showed you at the top, and they have a provider database, so you can look for providers in your area. Unfortunately, in our area, it is relatively sparse, but you might be able to get providers from a little bit further away to travel. And I'm not currently up on who's traveling where, but you can always try and reach out to folks. So just wrapping up a little bit here, you should always keep your eye on the plants after system installation, if it's whether they're new plants or established plants. And you may need redundant irrigation until certain plants have established. The mulch basins, you can move them out, but you likely can't move them in, and you don't really want to dig them twice. So they often get put kind of in a middle zone of where they're going to irrigate a tree after it's been established. So you may need to do some, certainly when it's getting established, some additional regular pressure system hose irrigation. It doesn't happen much in our area, but if you see signs of overwatering, again, you just can turn the three-way valve, flip that three-way valve so the water is going towards to the sewer, or if you have individual outlet valves, you can adjust so that most of the water is going to a plant that is appreciating getting the quantity of water that you're sending to it. Again, always leave one open without a valve. And if in case you do see ponding or runoff, you should turn it off. But I've never ever once heard of that, even this winter. So it's not common for a system that is installed properly. So finally, to wrap up, landscape needs dictate system design. You do need to work from your plants backwards. It is very much best for trees and larger landscape features because of the fact that the emitters are kind of it's not drip emitters by any stretch, right? These are actually 1/2 inch to 1.5 inch emitters. So they're large pipes at the end there. And so that's much better for trees than smaller features. Laundry to landscape is easy, cheapest, is kind of low hanging fruit. Most people have a situation where you could put in a laundry to landscape system and there's no permit. Obviously branch drain is a little more complex and expensive. Sometimes it just isn't feasible. But if you are remodeling a bathroom, that is where you have opportunity. So we have about 10-ish minutes for questions. I do have more slides about the slab situation with a tub. So if folks are interested in that particular situation, I can move into those, but let's just start with some questions if we have any before we go there.
Thank you, Leslie. Currently, there's no new questions. We did have one person ask about the website, and I believe they're talking about the Citrus Heights Water District website, but I'm still waiting back to hear if that's the website that they were. So I sent them the link on that. But
it might have been the Greywater Action, which I believe is simply www.greywateraction.org.
Okay.
I didn't give a link or that particular URL on my slide, so that might be the one they're interested in, and that's the provider. I mean, there's lots of information there. They originally were called the Greywater Gorillas, and they started in Berkeley, founded by Laura Allen, who has really carried this torch forward and done some amazing work and education and just advancing the Greywater generally in California. So hopefully that is the link that person was hoping for.
Yeah.
If there are any other questions, I can go into the slab slides.
Yeah, at this time I'm not seeing any, so if
Okay.
you want to go ahead.
All right, I will do that. Okay, so this is the slab solution story. I had a client who has a redwood in the backyard and very much wants to keep it healthy through the drought. Redwoods are not actually climate appropriate landscaping. A lot of people plant them, however, because they grow so fast and they're lovely, but they're often not happy in our climate. So I don't, unfortunately, recommend planting redwoods. Chances are they're not going to be super happy. However, this was an existing redwood and the client was remodeling and wanted to get wanted a great big deep tub, and thought, okay, if I can water my redwood with my tub, then I'm good. So the solution, this is a new pour slab, but we would have had to have drilled a core through the foundation or gone below it if we were following kind of the normal sewer approach. But we need to maintain our elevation so that by the time we get to the backyard to this redwood tree, we're not 2-3 feet deep. So what the contractor did was build this frame underneath this lovely deep tub. So there's now this lovely kind of little step up that's actually a nice feature that raised the tub only about 6 inches from the regular floor level. But what that did was it created just enough room to get, and I know it's difficult to see here. Here's the drain from the tub. There's a P-trap right here, and the valve is here underneath this actuator to get the drain. And then there's after the valve goes back to the sewer in the slab under here, can't see it. But the pipe that goes out to the landscape is resting just on top of the foundation and the sill here. And that really made a huge difference. So this is a little more detail. You can see what that looks like. Here's where the pipe is resting just on top of the foundation and going to the exterior. And this is what it looks like on the exterior. So this got sealed up and such, but it came out right here. Here's a clean out. Actually, that got replaced with a anti-siphon clean out. And the water flows, it's bracketed here to the house, turn the corner, making its way towards the tree. And sorry for the shadow, it's difficult, but the pipe was running here along the house, and then it came here and then branched, it went down to 1.5 inches. So we have branched that way, branched this way, and then 2 more branch here. So basically this is in the drip zone of this redwood tree. There are 4 discharge points right along here that 50-gallon tub is feeding, so that redwood tree can get all of their tub water. And that is my last slide. So are there any thoughts or questions about the slab or any other questions?
No real new questions in the chat. I did get one asking if people can go back and rewatch this. And yes, we are posting this to our YouTube soon after this. So you could go on there and this is the perfect slide to talk about it on, because yeah, we'll be posting this to our YouTube, as you can see right there. And also we have all of our other Water Smart classes posted there. So if you want to go through there, there's a lot of good information. But thank you, Leslie. I think that was great.
All right, thank you. I hope everybody got a little more knowledgeable about Greywater, and feels like they got enough or the right information to take a step forward. There were definitely a lot of people who were interested in getting a system. Is there any, I guess I'll ask, since we have a couple more minutes, if you're, what is the barrier you're thinking right now that might be keeping you from getting a system right now? What's the thing that, or some folks might be, yeah, I'm ready to roll. But if not, what is the thing that's you're thinking is keeping you from getting one?
I'm seeing there's one answer, and it looks like it's the expenses.
Expense.
Expense for the benefits. So,
Absolutely. So obviously branch drain is more expensive. I absolutely get that. And like I said, there's not a, you're doing this because you care about saving water, because you are concerned about the drought, because you want to see your landscape thrive without running your hose so much and running your irrigation system so much. The laundry system, I very much, if you have a handy person in your family or somebody that you use at your home, it can't hurt to show them the code or show them this presentation and get a bid from them, right? And just get an idea of what they specifically will charge. And there's a lot of handy people out there who have varying charges. So at least check it out and see if an actual bid is still too much for you.
another comment, this attendee says they have an older home from 1983 on a slab, and they feel that might be a little bit of a challenge, but you did kind of highlight a little bit of ingenuity that you've used in the past to get around that.
Right, so a newer home, right, so most homes are slabs, no doubt. And so that makes branch drain definitely tricky, but the laundry landscape is generally doable for most people, just regardless of the age of your home.
And then another comment that talks about how it sounds a little complicated with the soaps and cleansers, that being just a little overwhelming.
Yeah, I worry about that, given all the details, but informed consent here. Yes, for branch drain, again, it's you have to look at your shampoo, you have to look at your conditioner, and any other kind of products, body soap that you're using. But again, for the laundry landscape, it's typically one thing. And I'll just say generally, like softeners and a lot of those additives in laundry systems aren't, you might think about whether they're really necessary, whether you really need those things. And if you can whittle it down to just the laundry soap, then that's a really easy one to solve.
And another individual is kind of saying that it's great for a larger family. So, and that's true. I mean, larger families are going to use a lot more water, and a single homeowner, what are your thoughts about that?
Absolutely the case. So for a single homeowner living alone, the expense, if especially if you're wondering whether I really have or want to put out this money, may not make a lot of sense because you're not producing a ton of water. Some folks aren't showering every day. So yeah, they're not really producing a ton of discharge water in the first place. But if you're 3, 4, 5, 6 people in the house, you are going through a lot of water. And you could successfully irrigate large portions of your yard.
And we have a few attendees saying thank you, and yeah, I think that was a lot of good information. So yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you to everyone, and have a great day.
Yeah, hope everybody enjoyed this, and it was information that they felt they were getting signing up for the class.